My name is Pauline Bartani, and my project is on the executive functioning outcomes among children with comorbid ADHD and anxiety. So first, a few definitions. ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder characterized by elevated levels of inattention and hyperactivity. ADHD symptoms are often associated with academic underachievement and increased risky behavior. Anxiety disorders consist of functionally impairing levels of future concern and avoidance of feared objects or situations. Anxiety frequently co-occurs with externalizing problems, some of the more common ones being ADHD. So up to a third of children with ADHD experience comorbid anxiety disorders. Comorbidity presents new challenges in many domains, such as elevated clinical symptoms, impaired peer relationships, and differences in treatment and intervention responses. But in this project, we're going to be focusing on differences in cognitive skills, also known as executive functions. ADHD itself is characterized as a disorder of impaired executive functioning, as more than 50% of children with ADHD experience EF deficits. So it's critical to understand these cognitive outcomes specifically among this large comorbid group. But first, what are executive functions? These are higher order cognitive processes that are essential to performing self-directed actions in our day-to-day lives. Here we'll go over the three main facets of EF. Inhibitory control is defined as the ability to intentionally inhibit automatic dominant responses. Working memory is defined as the ability to manipulate and apply new information while engaging in goal-directed behaviors. Finally, set shifting is defined as the ability to accurately and efficiently switch attention between tasks or mental sets. So EF abilities can predict academic achievement and peer acceptance, and children who have greater challenges in these domains will likely experience greater inattentive and impulsive behaviors. So ADHD and anxiety both show unique patterns of association with EF. Children with ADHD often experience a weakened inhibitory control system, worse performance on verbal and visuospatial working memory tasks, as well as inaccuracy in their performance on set shifting tasks. Children with anxiety, on the other hand, do not exhibit any challenges in the inhibitory control domain, but they do experience reduced processing and storage of information in the working memory system and also struggle with switching attention between tasks. Overall, there's mixed literature on these outcomes, but these are some of the major takeaways in regards to this topic. With this in mind, we'll return to our research question. Does the presence of comorbid ADHD and anxiety elevate or mediate children's experiences of executive functioning deficits? So we hypothesize that children with comorbid ADHD and anxiety will perform better on inhibitory control tasks than the ADHD-only group, but worse than the control group due to anxiety's potential role as a buffer against inhibition deficits we see in children with ADHD. We also hypothesize that children in the comorbid group will perform worse on working memory tasks and worse on set shifting tasks than children in the three other groups due to the additive effects of clinical levels of anxiety. So moving on to the methods. So the larger study consists of 3 data collection points, but for this project, we will only be focusing on children's performance during the second collection point. So there were 210 participants between the ages of 7 and 14, with the average age being around 10. About a third of the participants were female, and the study consisted of an ethnically diverse sample. Exclusion criteria consisted of a history of seizures, neurodevelopmental disorders, or other neurological conditions. So participants were split into 4 groups: ADHD only, anxiety only, comorbid ADHD and anxiety, as well as a non-clinical control group. So inclusion criteria for the ADHD group was a diagnosis through the DISC, and inclusion criteria for the anxiety group was diagnosis through the DISC or the CBCL. And both of these measures follow the DSM-4 diagnostic criteria. Participants completed 3 laboratory-based performance tasks to measure their EF abilities. So participants first completed the children's version of the Golden Stroop task in order to measure the inhibitory control facet of EF. And the color word condition, the words were printed in mismatching ink colors, and participants were asked to name the color of the ink, inhibiting the automatic response of reading the printed word. The digit span backwards module of the WISC measures working memory, as participants are asked to recall and repeat digits from memory in the backwards order. Finally, participants completed the children's version of the trail making test, where they were asked to consecutively connect letters and numbers alternating between the 2 groups. So a greater time to complete the task indicates worse set shifting abilities. So here are a few of our preliminary results. After running a one-way ANOVA, we found no significant differences in the performance of participants on the inhibitory control task, but we did find significant differences in the working memory and set shifting tasks. So in order to explore these significant results further, we ran Tukey post-hoc tests. In regards to working memory, we found that the comorbid group performed significantly worse on the digit span task than the non-clinical control group, with a moderate effect size shown here. In regards to set shifting, we found that the comorbid group performed significantly worse on the trail making task than the non-clinical control group, with a large effect size. We also found that the comorbid group performed significantly worse than the ADHD-only group, also with a large effect size. So moving on to the discussion. No significant group differences were found in the inhibitory control facet, which is in contrast to past literature that had found anxiety to act as a protective factor for inhibition problems in children with ADHD. For working memory, ADHD and anxiety alone did not prompt significant differences, but the presence of comorbid disorders was found to be a risk factor for poorer performance. Past literature defends that psychiatric comorbidity can negatively affect EF, and these results reflect this association. Finally, children with comorbid disorders perform significantly worse on set shifting tasks than the control group and the ADHD-only group. This is consistent with research on comorbidity, as the presence of an anxiety disorder may have exacerbated negative outcomes in this domain. So what is the significance of this? ADHD and anxiety are prevalent psychiatric disorders that are associated with adverse academic and social outcomes, and they very often co-occur with each other. So these results point to the increased negative effects that can arise from the presence of both these disorders in children. EF deficits can not only be harmful for children's academic and social success, but they can also be present throughout individuals' lives as adults and can manifest through challenges with attention and organization throughout individuals' lives. This is especially important in order to understand how EF treatment and intervention plans can be adapted for children who experience comorbid disorders, as we know that we can see unique outcomes. Finally, I want to give a thank you to my mentors, Gabby McNaughton and Dr. Steve Lee, and thank you so much for listening.